I was familiar with the male gaze, but I didn't know that John Berger, the art critic, coined it in the 1970s as part of this series he did on the BBC, and that he
Mm,
had this multi-episode program just about new ways of looking at art and
mm.
challenging dominant ways of understanding the artist's role in the world. And I thought, gosh, that's so remarkable. Like there was a time when an arts and cultural education was something that public broadcasters took quite seriously. You know what I mean? It's amazing.
Yeah, I do feel very privileged about that, but I also feel privileged that this sensibility that attracted me to jazz existed in my heart and in my brother's heart, and that was important to my mum, in particular, and got encouragement for that, you
And so,
know.
what was it about jazz in particular?
I loved the magic of it. Whenever I saw someone like Duke Ellington or Errol Garner or Oscar Peterson play, I just thought these are magical human beings who are able to not only absorb a piece of music, understand it, know it, they can replay it, but then also take it to another level of where they turn the music into their own. I thought, how does anybody do that? First of all, learning the music. How do you learn the music so quickly that you can turn it around and play it as your own? I was just fascinated about that. I loved the sound of it. I loved the sound of the big bass. I loved the rhythm of it and just the way the people played together. It had this warmth and it had this beauty to it. It just felt like my culture. It felt like it comes from my people, and something on a deeper level just connected to it. I just love that it made me feel good about myself as a Black person as well,
Mm.
because every person who plays jazz is a genius. Herbie Hancock, who's smarter than that? McCoy Tyner, Miles Davis, Charlie Parker. What's better than that? Who achieves greater than that? Duke Ellington, Count Basie.
Mm.
Oh my goodness, Art Tatum. These guys set whole new ways of thinking, whole new ways of expressing music, whole new ways of interpreting. It just blew my mind. There is something about music and all of art, all of the artistic pursuits that goes beyond the mind and goes beyond verbal reasoning. And it just informs another part of intelligence that's linked with the soul.
I just got goosebumps. Okay, so just yesterday, I'm going
Yeah.
off piste, but it's not off piste actually. It's totally related to this. I've been very enchanted recently by this incredible biological philosopher called Andreas Weber, who is really urging us and calling us to understand our evolution and our kind of purpose as being much more than the kind of limiting ideas of the Darwinistic causal mechanistic thrust. He's putting forward what he calls an erotic ecology. So even down to our individual cells, each one is animated by an erotic thrust. They want to touch and be transformed. I was reading something by Sophie Strand, and she was saying that I get goosebumps. I get really physical reactions to like spiritual stimuli. She was saying that all of the senses are ultimately touch. It's waves touching each other, then
Mm.
touching cells and sending electrical impulses. And so there's something about this resonance of the music that is beyond capital R reason, but is
Yes.
actually related to feeling. We're human.
I totally agree with that. I get a physical reaction when I listen to music, when I experience music. It is physical for me. I definitely relate to that. And I think music operates on many dimensions, and we're lucky if we can experience one, let alone the many. I like to think that I'm plugged into the many.
So there's this ongoing discourse and dialogue around the role of the Black artist, right, in
Hmm.
society. You've got questions about whether a Black artist, a Black musician is making Black music for Black people,
Yeah.
or whether Black art and the Black artist is always only responding to anti-Blackness and the social ills of our time. But I do think it comes down to what one thinks and believes their duty is as an artist. What is your purpose as an artist?
I think my purpose as an artist is to interpret what I feel about the world.
Mm.
And in the last 10, 15 years, I started and have been writing operas. I've written 4, and those I've found a way to tell universal stories with Black people in the lead, because I think all stories are for all people, but the all people stories we hear often don't put Black people front and center. So I've seen it as an opportunity for me to do that, to tell the story for all people with Black people front and center. And then also in analyzing the way my favorite composers and my favorite musicians have manifested their art, say, for example, Duke Ellington or John Coltrane, they have been quite outspoken in their art about the way they view their own people. But it's not like they're beating anyone over the head about it. They're just emanating a truth of where we come from, who we are as a society, and what the sound of that is. So I do relate very heavily to that. Same way, Herbie Hancock has always been one of my favorite artists. And if you think of his album, The Prisoner, from 1968, that's very much, it's got a piece called I Have a Dream. It's all about expressing civil rights, but Herbie's never been a person who beats anyone over the head about civil rights. It's all in there, and it's almost an effortless manifestation, emanation from a sophisticated view of how music is put together. And it can be really sophisticated, really complex, really esoteric, really simple, really earthy, really heavenly. And so I just, to fit my art, knowing that I have this great canvas in which to operate that isn't dictated by my need to tell people only about my culture, but I do like to relate my culture and where I'm coming from and how I view the world with everybody, so everybody can see it and everyone can absorb it and feel it.
I really am vibing with that. And I think you've also brought into relief another aspect. James Baldwin said that it was his duty to bear witness, right? He was looking and observing and showing us back to ourselves. But what we learn from James Baldwin, I think in particular, is that, let me say it another way. So often when people are talking about quote unquote Black art, and they're non-Black people, they think that art therefore doesn't apply to them, right? And actually, as you've so elegantly said, that this is a story that just centers the experiences of my people. It does not mean that that doesn't have a universal impact. It's the same with Busy Being Black. We're talking about belonging, enchantment, love. These are universal themes.
Absolutely.
But when you put someone else as the focus of explaining those dreams, it offers a beautiful contour and texture, I think, to these stories that we don't often get to hear.
And it's so needed. It's so needed.